So I'd like to take you through our practicum evaluation forms and the forms that are used by the program to evaluate both your performance at your practicum sites and also to evaluate the practicum sites themselves. Before we jump into the slides themselves, I want to give you a few key tips, or these are my number one tips, if you will. First, read your handbook. Your handbook has a lot of detailed information in it. And the way I suggest reading the handbook is reading it as you need it. So right now, as you're thinking about practicum, as you're thinking about how to go through the practicum experience, open up and read the section on practicum. It's not something that you want to read straight through. But make sure that you read the handbook, the details in the handbook. You're responsible for knowing those and acting in accordance with everything that's in your handbook. Secondly, as you all experienced this past year, read the PENDL.Guidelines. guidelines. The PENDL.Guidelines guidelines and the PENDL system is a system that our program relies upon to pursue practicum training. There will be some significant changes coming up this year, so I suggest strongly that you read the guidelines once they're published. The basic procedure will remain the same, but there will be some important things, and we'll be merging with Ninja.Dot this year as well. So make sure that you read those when they come out, and I'll be sending out an announcement about those, or your new DCT will. Secondly, as you're going through as you're going through the process, talk to the associate DCT, the DCT, and your mentors for advice. What do they think you should do? How do they see your training progression? What do they think is important for you to do? Are there gaps in what you've done or not done? And make sure that you're getting multiple voices and multiple opinions. And that last thing that I added in there is to talk to your supervisors at your sites. They should also be very valuable in giving you advice and giving you information. Most of them are very familiar with the training scene in the area and the people who are doing the training, and so they may have valuable recommendations. To be honest with you, some of their recommendations might be better than some of the faculty members in the department, because faculty are not necessarily embedded in the training environment at in the region. So I want to talk to you about the two primary forms that you will use as evaluative mechanisms for your time in practicum. I'm going to start with the second one here in the bold, the Clinical Activities Report and Competencies Evaluation. This is the primary evaluation of you by your supervisor that will be completed each semester that you're in practicum. The practicum site supervisor and student evaluation form is the form that you will complete that helps the program evaluate the site, the supervisor that you had that year or have that year, and yourself as you go through the practicum. So you'll complete each of those every semester. Both of those can be found on your Google Drive in the administrative forms folder. I would suggest right now that you kind of pause the video, you navigate to your folder, you find these forms, open them, and then you can pause the lecture just so you have them as we're going. I haven't been able to figure out how to pull them up as we're going through this, so it might be helpful for you to have them open so that you can look at the actual form as we're talking about them. So if you want to pause the lecture right now and kind of do that and make sure you can find them, it would be good both for you to know where they're at, as well as good for you to have as we talk about them here now. If you wanted to scroll to the very end, there's two slides at the very end of this lecture where I did link them as an embedded object. So if you go to those last two slides, you should be able to double click on that and it should open them. But it would probably be more valuable for you to actually go to your administrative forms folder and be able to find them so that you know where they're at and you know how to locate them when you need them. Okay, so let's start with the Clinical Activities Report and Competencies Evaluation. Quite a mouthful. That's the actual name of the form that you will search for on your drive and that you should pull up and look at. So that's the actual title of the form. There's a couple of things to note. One is that this form is likely to be, not likely, it's going to be revised in a number of different ways. And so I'm going to try and talk to you about the things that are likely to remain on there versus the things that appear right now as you pull it up. And I'll try to explain some of those things as we go through. One of the key things is there is mention of grades. This used to be a graded experience for our students. So the form remains or retains a remnant of that where students were graded based on where they were in terms of their evaluation. So all the stuff related to grades will go away. This is now a pass, no credit grading system that we use for this particular course. As it translates to clinical training, it will be either that you meet expectations or you don't, right? And like many other things in the program, if you don't meet expectations in a given area, that may be cause for remediation, for a personal improvement plan, for disciplinary action. So the goal here, and students get obsessed with this, the goal here is to meet expectations. It's great if you're above and you're superior and all those things, but the key thing here is that you need to meet expectations based on your supervisor's evaluation of you at your practicum site. So that's one thing that you will see change. There's some of these boxes that will change too in the beginning sections of the form, so I'm not going to kind of cover them. I'm going to take you actually to page 3 of the document. And one thing that's important for you to notice is that, let's see if I can get this up. Yeah, there's this APA required observation. What this means is that APA accreditation standards require that at least once per semester you are directly observed. So direct observation according to APA could mean literally you have someone in the room observing you. It could mean that someone's watching you on videotape. It could mean that they are listening to an audio tape of your session. The key thing here that APA has wanted to do is to say, look, we appreciate that students can come in and report what they do in session and that you can supervise them based on that. But we think it's really important that supervisors actually see, hear, listen to the actual things that are going on in a session. So your supervisor should know that this is a required part. They should document it here. But when you're looking at it, you should make sure that it's documented, and you should, more importantly, make sure that you're being observed. It's one of the hardest things for me. I know, like in training, it was always hard to be watched in tapes. During my postdoc, we taped every single session because we were doing research on it. And listening to those sessions was some of the most beneficial things that I'd done. I wish I'd actually done it earlier in my training. So don't be afraid of the direct observation. Utilize it as a resource for growth. The second thing that you'll notice is when you look at this form, then there are areas of evaluation, and there are 7 of them total that you'll see here listed. And then for each of those competency areas, and this is the way I would think about them as competency areas, there may be sub-competencies listed under each of those. So for example, section 2, which is professionalism, has a 2.1, 2.11, 2.12, and so you're going to be evaluated both on the overall competency or the overall area, as well as the different components of that area. You, again, kind of to focus on this, want to meet expectations in each of those areas. Theoretically, a site or the program could have a concern that would spark a remediation plan or a PIP. So I'm just looking at myself right now at 2.14, concern for the welfare of others. Like if your supervisor kind of gave you a significantly below expectation evaluation for that, and they wrote us a note that, I don't know, you did this thing at your practicum site, like that may trigger something for us. generally we're looking to see that you're meeting expectations. And some of the expectation is that even earlier in your training site, your practicum, maybe some of these things are below expectations. And the key thing there is for you and your supervisor to put a plan in place that can be monitored by the program, for you to get to what the supervisor would consider expectations appropriate for your level of training. And that last thing, I'll repeat it because I think it's important. That idea that there's a level of expectation for your training. So you're not expected to be a fourth year if you're a second year, right? You're not expected to be a second year if you're a third year, right? So your training site should have an idea of what's an appropriate expectation given your training level. The last thing that you'll notice is there'll be like overall evaluations for each of those particular areas, and then an overall evaluation of your performance at the practicum site. So again, the goal is for you to meet expectations overall and for you to meet expectations in each of those areas of evaluation at each rating time, or evaluation time. Rating time sounds weird. Evaluation time. So at the end of the spring and the end of at the end of fall and the end of spring semester. I think I've already alluded to most of this last question of how does the program use the form. We use the form to make sure that you're proceeding adequately in your practicum training, that your supervisors are noting that you're meeting expectations given your level of training and given your level or given your place in the program, period. So you hand those in, those are reviewed by the DCT every semester. If there's a problem, the DCT or the clinical office should reach out to you. If there's, my hope has always been if there's a problem at the practicum site that it's caught earlier before the evaluation form goes in, and there's some sort of remediation or personal improvement plan that goes on before that. That doesn't always happen. But these will be reviewed by the clinical office each time, the DCT in particular. And if you're not meeting expectations, then a meeting will be held and we'll talk about kind of where to go after that. So the second form that you're going to be using is what's referred to as it's not referred to, it's called the Practicum Site Supervisor and Student Evaluation Form. This form is an important form because APA and our accreditors specifically ask that we review each of our sites that our students are used for practicum training, that we review the site, the quality of practicum training delivered there, the quality of the supervisor that's delivering the supervision, and then the final part of this is like you reflecting on your own progress and growth on this form. So that evaluation of the sites is important from an APA accreditation standpoint. And so it's important that these forms are completed and returned so that we can continue to evaluate the quality of the practicum training that you're getting. The form itself, as the title of the form might imply, has 3 sections to it. Each of these sections has both a kind of numerical ranking as well as an opportunity for you to provide free-formed responses and reflection on each of these particular areas. So the 3 areas, the first one is the evaluation of the site, the second is the evaluation of the supervisor, and then finally the evaluation of yourself at the site and during your practicum training. I don't know that if you pull these up, I think the prompts in each of these areas are pretty self-explanatory. We want to make sure that your supervisors are open to your thoughts, your feedback. They're giving you good supervision. They're making themselves available to you. For the sites themselves, we want to make sure that the training is adequate given your particular training level, that you're been given opportunity to interact with clients, to get your training needs met, etc. So these are largely evaluative, and students may be hesitant at times to provide honest evaluation of their site or their supervisors, but we actually do look at these. We do take them seriously. and we may not allow students to go back to a site until issues are fixed, or maybe we just don't recommend those sites to students. So these evaluation forms are used internally in important ways. So hopefully you take the time and make sure that you're evaluating them appropriately. Obviously, you don't need to wait if there's an issue that arrives at your practicum. You don't need to wait to fill out this form. You can bring this to the clinical program leadership. You can bring this to your mentor. You can bring this to your practicum instructors. So please don't feel like you need to wait for the end of the semester to evaluate something, especially if there's a problem at any of your given sites. The one thing that I've been kind of like disappointed by, to be honest, is at times like the self-reflective part of this. Like some students have been really good at reflecting on their own progress and growth. They've been really good at kind of reflecting on what happened at the site, what they've learned, what they haven't, what could be better, what could be worse. I haven't gone crazy in terms of tracking that down. I think there's maybe 2 forms that I've returned to people over the last 3 or 4 years where I've said, hey, can you reflect on this a little bit more or at a little bit of a deeper level? I highly value that. I think we as a program do, so I'd encourage you to engage in that practice. I think I've addressed this, how does the program use these forms already, so I won't repeat it. I will repeat that they're important and important for you to kind of spend some time with and reflect upon. And then the final thing that I want to talk about before we finish up this lecture are due dates. Due dates will be sent to you by the clinical office. They are usually posted both within the handbook as well as on your calendar. We try to send out reminders if we can, but you're not always going to get reminders, so you're responsible for knowing what the handbook says and what the academic calendar says in terms of due dates. These are typically due toward the end of the semester. Some practicum instructors might have the forms, they might ask for the forms to be submitted a little bit earlier so that they can have individual meetings with you and discuss the practicum evaluation forms with you. We do expect, and we do as a program, think of these these due dates as, sorry, I'm trying to highlight here. We think of these due dates as professional competencies, right? We haven't enforced this. I haven't enforced this as strongly in the past as we will be moving forward. But these are professional competencies and an obligation to you as a student in the program. If you're not handing in program forms on time, it will be reflected in your evaluation from the program, right? And this is not meant to be punitive as much as it's meant to reflect the importance of getting these things on time. If your supervisor is behind, or I'll go over to your research forms because I've fallen into this trap myself, unfortunately. But like if your supervisor's behind or your mentor's behind, or there's something standing in your way of getting the forms to the clinical office on time, just let the clinical office know that. The clinical office can step in and prompt and threaten and do all those things to kind of get people to fill out their forms. So sometimes this isn't your fault, but ultimately it will fall to you. The question will come to you of like, hey, student X, why do we not have your forms yet? And so I would much rather you be proactive of like, I've asked so-and-so to fill in these forms. I haven't gotten a response from them. Just wanted to let you know, keep you up to date, blah, blah, blah. And by the me, I'm talking the clinical office here. Obviously, I served in that role, but I'm really talking about you keeping the clinical office in mind here. So I think that's it. Get your stuff in on time is the short message there, okay? These last 2 slides here are simply links, again, to the embedded documents that we've been talking about that I told you could skip forward to and click on if you needed to. So they're here, but again, I think the more important thing is for you to find these in your administrative forms document and make sure you know how to access them.